Hey guys, Harv here, and welcome back to the Kerbal Space Program. The video I'm going to show you now is quite possibly the most ambitious project I've ever undertaken. It certainly felt like it whilst I was doing it. Yes, this is our artificial gravity series of sorts. This is the second part. The actual second part, the original second part, was going to be uploaded, and there was going to be this one, the third. Unfortunately, the file is corrupted and I can't seem to re-render it because there's some problem with Sony Vegas. But hopefully this one will render, and I can show you now just a quick preview of what the second one was going to be. Here it is! Look at this. This is much improvement over the last one, isn't it? It is actually a bit smaller in diameter, but it has size, it has edges, and it's pretty damn good, you may think. In reality, this is actually what we're going to be building today in this video. Yeah, it took an extremely long time. It was technically challenging, but I don't want to show you too much of that right now. So we'll get right into the building, and I have a lot of topics to talk about. As with the first artificial gravity one, this is aiming to be a bit more on the informative way of things. Now, I still do want to do commentary over the actual video, so it's a bit of a hot swap for me, trying to talk about both at the same time. But the actual building itself is less self-explanatory than the video. So, what are we doing? Well, one improvement over the last one is that the actual strut connecting the outer ring to the center in the previous design was in the center of the actual ring itself, meaning that there was going to be less room to actually move around the people who are driving or sitting on the inside ring. So I've tried to fix that here, and by doing so I've ended up with this new design. Working now, see if it fits. No, those poles aren't quite long enough. Going to have to do some resizing of the diameter. So the entire build process was basically just trying to resize everything. And I end up with a bottom bit, and you put it all together, and this is the ring that we saw for just a split second there. Now, unfortunately, with that comes the problem that the parent part of the outside ring sixth, because it's being in six parts, it's not at the center. So how am I going to get this thing up there? Am I going to do it like this, which looks remotely crazy, and then from there, how would I actually dock the thing to some sort of mover to put it in the correct position, and all these problems. So that didn't work out so well. I still do manage to find a fix for it. Unfortunately, that fix involves making it even bigger. The parts count for this thing was over 400. Over 400 parts. As the motorbike revs its engine, yes, 400 parts. It's a man part. It was a really, really big project. Probably the most ambitious that I've ever done. So we have to add on 5 panels wide now instead of the 4 panels it was going to be. And we have to put on the side-mounted parts. So bearing in mind that I want this thing to only be attached to the center via outside parts, so the ring space is completely free, but I still want to be able to actually fly it up bit by bit, and to do that I'd have to have a part in the center to stack it from. Just a little detail into the complications. So that center bit there is actually going to be removed, what you can see at the moment, but you'll see that in the future. And as I've said, the video itself, the construction, it's quite repetitive, so I think I'm going to be moving away from doing big dockings unless I get some really, really interesting challenge I want to undertake. But if you have suggestions for that, you can type them in the comments. But yeah, doing big dockings, it does get very repetitive. But there, in the VAB, this is not how it's going to be sent up. One person was like, oh, I sent up the entire ring. Yeah, that's easier. This thing actually probably doesn't weigh that much. Doing it in separate parts, this is simply just putting it together. So, without further ado, the center part, and I'll be commentating interesting things that happen, because although it was repetitive, it didn't go quite to plan. The construction of this, that is. But I need to talk now about science. So, I remember in the previous video I talked about various different things, and there were a few topics I said that I stated without really providing backup for, and a lot of people were like, oh, well technically, in this example, I said that 4 rotations per minute was optimal, and people were like, oh, technically, you should have the slowest rotations possible to counteract the Coriolis effect, or to reduce it, which I'll talk about later, and you should have as wide a diameter as possible to make up for that. And that's technically true if you have unlimited resources to make it, a massively big diameter, and you don't mind spending all the fuel that takes to get into orbit. The 4 RPM thing actually came from 4 rotations per minute, that is, rotational period being 15 seconds. That actually came from a research paper done by NASA in 1972, if that's right, 1972. And they did tests about the effects, the medical effects on the human body from being spun round in a ring really fast. They did their tests at 5 rotations per minute, and they also did tests at 4 rotations per minute. So obviously they didn't go any lower than that. But what they discovered was that at 4 rotations per minute, 95% of the test subjects that they put under stress in that environment, 95% of them were completely fine. So medical-wise, they adapted to the environment perfectly well. 5 RPM, and it was only it dropped down to 60% were okay adapting. So 4 RPM, the idea is to try and get the diameter as small as possible, so that you have less to put up in space. Obviously this diameter that we're building here is massive compared to the other one, but yeah, smaller diameter as possible in order to save resources and time, at the cost of having a higher speed, which increases the Coriolis effect, and a higher speed will also cause some medical side effects. So it's a balance between the two. Now, the balance between the two is what I want to talk about, more specifically the formula to determine force created, because at the end of the day you're trying to generate this weight, you're trying to make people get stuck to the base of your ring, but it's a balance between the radius and the rotational speed, the rotational period, which is what we're going to talk about now. So, science time. Force equals mass times acceleration. This is something, let me, actually a bit of a disclaimer, I'm a GCSE physics student, so this is all a bit above my head. Hopefully I'm going to get everything correct. I did make mistakes in the second part of this series. Luckily that got corrupted, so I can fix them. Bam! Explosions. Yeah, we're going to have to strengthen that center core. I'm not going to let the video distract me whilst I'm in flow, whilst I get into flow. Distracting myself now. Force equals mass times acceleration. F equals ma. It's a very common formula applied to a lot of things. So in this case, the force of the force the person experiences against the surface of the ring, so the weight in that instance, is their mass times by acceleration. And acceleration in this circumstance is determined by the radius of the ring, which is what we're talking about, the balance between the two. The radius of the ring, so the diameter, the radius, how large the ring is going to be, basically, times by omega squared. Now, omega is angular velocity, which is something that comes into the Coriolis effect that we'll talk about later. But omega squared is 2 pi over rotational period squared. So we have acceleration equals the radius times by 2 pi over 15. If we were going to have 4 rotations per minute, so that would be 15 seconds. So 2 pi over rotational period squared. And that is how you that's how you find the acceleration, which you then times by the mass of the person to find the force they undergo. To give an example, if we had a radius of 21 meters, which has been suggested by people as a well actually no, it's not that it's just been suggested. It's the shortest that you can really do to maintain 4 rotations per minute if your desired force is Martian gravity, so 0.3 newtons or 0.36 Gs. Isn't that what it is? I think it's 0.3 something. But at any rate, so the force equals mass times acceleration. The mass of a person, standard mass of a person, what is it? 90 kilograms. That's not supposed to happen, by the way, looking at the video now. But yeah, the mass times by the acceleration, and that would be 21 meters in radius times by 2 pi divided by 15 seconds squared, which comes out as 3.68 meters per second squared. That's the acceleration. times by the mass, whatever, and you end up with about 0.3 Gs, which is nice. That's Martian gravity. Later on I might take a look at the video and see how fast I rotate this thing, but and actually work out the force exerted onto our unwitting pilot. That's not supposed to happen as well, looking at the video. The first part, going back to actually commentating the video like I probably should be, the first part of the mission was all failures. There were a lot of failures. It seems that by the first sixth, the first one to go on there, the first one to go on the ring, seems to get performance anxiety and starts breaking in all sorts of different imaginative ways. But after that it kind of settles down into the more repetitive, okay, we dock and we leave and we dock and we leave. But yes, so what have I just talked about? Force equals mass times acceleration, which is how you determine the force exerted onto a person. Now, I have been mentioning the Coriolis effect. What's the Coriolis effect, Harvey? It's as a result of angular velocity, which is omega. And now this is my understanding of it. So think about it, common sense point of view. If I was to talk like Terry Pratchett, who is an incredible British author, by the way, if I was to talk like Terry Pratchett, common sense versus actual scientific method. So common sense tells you that if you have a ring rotating and you're just in the middle of the ring and you're in free fall, nothing much is gonna happen. It's rotating around you. You're in the center. Nothing much is going on. And if you were at the side and the ring was rotating, then why would anything happen other than, you know, friction kind of tumbling you over? So it's all about angular velocity. If you start off at the center of that ring and you have it spinning around you, if you were to have a ladder reaching down towards the floor and you climb down that ladder, then you're increasing your radius, thinking about it in terms of, you know, this formula, acceleration equals radius times omega squared. You're increasing your radius, your distance from the center of rotation, by moving down that ladder. But you're not increasing your angular velocity. In fact, you are if the ladder was rigid. If you were just moving from the center to the circumference of the ring, you're not increasing your angular velocity. That's where the ladder comes into it, because if you're climbing down and the ladder is actually attached to the circumference and the entire thing is rotating, then you're going to be pushed along the rotation direction. You feel this push as the ladder pulls you up to rotational speed. It increases your angular velocity. So that's the Coriolis effect. It's the force felt as you get pulled anti-spinward as the ladder tries to increase your angular velocity. So what does that mean? Well, it means that when you jump or change your radius, if you change your distance from the center of rotation, then you feel the effect of this weird force. You didn't honestly think it's going to be perfect gravity, did you? No, of course, there's problems as a result of rotating. So you feel this weird force, and that's actually it's quite interesting. It means that you have to adapt your environment differently. There were two examples. There was juggling and kicking a foot. No, juggling and lifting a weight are changed by the Coriolis effect. Or is it? Or is juggling? No, juggling won't be. Juggling, because the ball is leaving your hand, you're not applying any more force to it. If you're lifting a weight in that environment, so you're standing on the base of your ring in your space station, which, by the way, would have walls. I know, mine doesn't. This is more of a test facility. You can kind of cut out the whole people are going to be living on here and they won't need atmosphere. Well, they will inside their spacesuits because there's no sealed container for them to actually live in. But yeah, so if you were lifting a weight and you're just doing some weightlifting, trying to stay fit in your artificial gravity environment, the mass of the weight would be fairly considerable depending on how much of a weakling you are. You'd lift it up, and as you lift, you would actually be lowering its radius, its center from rotation, and as a result, in order to maintain the same acceleration, the angular velocity has to increase. So you lift this weight up, you're standing at the base of the ring and your constant angular velocity, and you lift this ring, this weight up, and it gets pulled over to the side. So you end up falling backwards in, if it's increasing its angular velocity, then it'll be pulling you, it would be pulling you spinward direction, maybe? So you end up, if you were pointing the anti-spinward direction, it would pull you over. So the main thing about the Coriolis effect is that it has weird, it is another force that it needs to be taken into consideration when people try to adapt to their new environment. I don't know, it's just something interesting I wanted to talk about and try and touch on. Because the Coriolis effect, as I've said, as I've briefly mentioned, is the reason why you want as slow a speed as possible, at the cost of having a larger radius. Because the slower the speed, the less angular velocity there is, which means that the effect occurring here happens less frequently. It's just something to think about. Now, how far through the video are we? We are 16 minutes through. Wow. Maybe I need to slow down a bit. Although I'm suspecting I'll probably just speed up the video. This originally was going to be like a half-an-hour thing, but because I already know exactly what I'm going to talk about, I haven't got that much left to talk about. There is one other thing I want to touch on. So, I've talked about how force equals mass times acceleration. You use that formula and those formulas that are on screen at the moment to determine the force generated. Now, there were people in the comments of the previous one who were saying, is it true, or asking, is it true that if you were born on Mars you couldn't go to Earth? Because your bones would be so used to the mere 0.3 Gs that Martian gravity gives, and your bones wouldn't be as built for the 1 G that Earth would have. And, you know, your bones would be strong enough to survive. And that is commonly accepted. Now, of course, that's if you're going from Mars straight to Earth and your bones aren't changing along the way. You're not doing any exercises to adapt you for the increased environment. It's a really interesting topic. So, force is determined by your mass and your acceleration, which is determined by the radius and your angular velocity. So, your angular velocity is how fast you're moving round the centre of rotation, right? Now, if you're in this ring and the ring is rotating at a speed to give you Martian gravity, and let's give a bit of a less dramatic example than you were born on Mars. Let's say you get on a ship for 2 years, you go to Mars for 2 years, you experience 0.3 Gs you experience 0.3 Gs and you work in that environment and your bones become weaker. Then you get back on the ship, this rotating artificial gravity centre that we're building. You get back on your ship and you go home to Earth or Kerbal, depending on what universe you're living in. So the ship is rotating to give you 0.3 Gs, and if you are too far adapted you won't be able to survive on Earth. What can you do about that? Well, you can increase the weight you feel by decreasing your well, you'd have to have something to stand on. You could decrease your radius and increase your angular velocity, or you could increase your radius and keep the same angular velocity, but that's not practical when the floor is there and there's no floor below the floor. So you can increase your angular velocity. How do you do that? Surely the ring is rotating at a constant speed. Well, you can just run round it. And that is what is so damn cool. The idea of it just struck me and it is so fantastic. You can just run round the ring to increase your angular velocity. And by doing so, you'll increase how much weight you feel. You know when you get tired, you get fatigued when you've been running for a long time, and you start to feel as if, oh, your body's really heavy and you're having to drag yourself. This would literally be your body would be more heavy. As you run, you would be subjected to feeling more weight, and that is really, really cool. So, if the astronauts had 2 years, and in those 2 years they needed to do some exercise to stay healthy, they could do jogging round the ring. Now, you may be thinking, hang on, what if you drop the opposite direction? Well, you'll be decreasing your angular velocity, and you'll actually end up experiencing less gravity. So, the thing applies both in the spinward direction and the anti-spinward. they could just jog round in the spinner direction and feel more weight. And perhaps, I don't know for sure, I somehow think it wouldn't be quite as simple as that, and bam, after 2 years of doing exercises a couple of times a day, you're adapted to Earth gravity. Also, I'm not sure how fast you'd have to run, but you would build up some immunity. You would increase the strength of your bones. And it's so awesome. I just love this topic. Artificial gravity that we can model in the Kerbal Space Program. That's another interesting thing. We can do this. We can do this in the Kerbal Space Program. It's pretty damn awesome, and doing this entire project was a bit of, I wouldn't say an eye-opener because I've done large dockings before, but it definitely broadened my horizons, and I think I need to start being a bit more ambitious in my videos. Constructing a massive ring in orbit to rotate, to fling people around on the outside and make them feel weight in outer space. That is a bit more appealing to, I don't know, hopefully it's a bit more appealing to you guys viewing the video, rather than just, hey, we're going to go land on a planet. Although, on that note, the Permadeath Space Program has had a lack recently. I haven't done an episode for like 3 weeks, and no one has mentioned. Not that I've seen, at least. But no, it just, because those episodes are so long and they're all live commentary, it takes quite a while to find time to record them. And my priority was getting Moonbase established, which is another thing that I will be uploading videos of. In fact, there's actually been a bit of a lack of videos on the channel for the past 5 days at the time of recording. This will probably be going up, and it'll probably have been a week or so till you saw the last video. So hopefully this is enough to fill the gap, eh? Maybe. But yes, I think I will aim to be a bit more ambitious with our whatchamacallit, our Permadeath Space Program. But Harv, being ambitious, you may end up killing a Kerbal. Well, we all have to take chances, and at the end of the day, if the Permadeath Space Program ends, I can find different series to do. There's always no end of series. Series I. Should be Series I, shouldn't it? Series I. Here we go. Back to commentating the video, because I've really talked about all the sciencey topics I wanted to talk about. Determining the force as a result of radius and speed, the Coriolis effect, just jogging around as an exercise to increase your weight. It's a pretty damn interesting thing. And here we are at nearly the end of the video. This is the final sixth. The final parts to be docked in. Ah man, and we'll complete this. So, to start off with, the first sixth went on and things were breaking all the time. I think as I put more and more parts onto it, it had more rigidity in the structure. So everything was connected together and there was less room for flexing and breaking and parts not being where they should be. And adding this final part will only increase that. So there was a point when I was building it when I was considering scrapping the entire design and building it again differently, because the problem is the docking ports are actually on struts on the panels, and those struts are pretty thin and weak. It's the smallest type you can get, so those seem to be the point at which everything was breaking. Interesting enough, actually. When I was designing this, I nearly forgot about the problem of mass outside as opposed to in, because the docking ports are going to be the weakest connection point in the entire structure. Or I don't know, actually. 2 docked ports may be treated by the game as one object. It's possible, they could be actually incredibly strong, but in real life you'd assume that the docking port would be the weakest link. And I was putting my mass really far out, and my docking ports were attached in. Similar to how we did in the last video, the girders were on the outside panels. That's not good, because that pushes more weight out towards the ring, as opposed to, relative to the docking port it pushes more weight out towards the ring, so the docking ports actually feel more stress on them. Yes, but no, the design this entire video leading up to this one moment where we finally attach and the docking ports all snap together shut took about, I'd hazard maybe 16 hours of playing the game. That is the very first episode, the second episode which I can't upload, and this episode. About 16 hours of playing the game, plus some extra research time which you guys won't be seeing. But yes, never mind all of that, never mind my grievances that it took such a long time. This thing is finally built. So instead of immediately going to celebrate the fact, let's just deorbit the lander. I haven't really been showing much. In this video I've just been showing the launch and the docking and the moving away from the docking. So I just want to prove this lander actually can work. Unlike the last one, in the video that you didn't see. Need to stop making references to videos that I don't upload. In the second part, we killed a few Kerbals, but never mind that. They signed the contract. They signed all these things that we are not responsible. Shoot for the Moon Industries is not responsible for the death of any pilots. And there the parachutes open, and there the thing drops and explodes. Yeah, I put 4 parachutes on the main command module, and I didn't think to put any on the actual rocket because having it break off as a result of the sudden deceleration is pretty entertaining, and it's safer. You know, it moves the hazardous parts away from the crew. Of course, if it was a nuclear engine, they'd be landing in the irradiated cloud, but oh well, they aren't. So here we are. Now is the bit we'll all be waiting for. I didn't do it in the previous video, in the one that I actually did upload. I didn't actually show the people on the inside of the ring being spun round. Does it actually work, Harvey? Are you lying to us? Is all this physics just made up on the spot, or can people actually experience weight? So there we go, getting round. We are now touching the surface, and there we go. Now it's a bit anticlimactic, I have to admit, mainly because he can't stand up and move around because of the game. The game, squad, please. It's not an important update because it is never going to be applied to anyone in any regular playthrough of KSP or any regular journey through KSP's wonders. But it would be so nice if the Kerbals could actually stand up based on weight felt on a surface, rather than you are experiencing gravity against the planet, or on top of a rocket that's sitting on the planet. But you can see, hopefully, you can see that the Kerbal, the entire thing is rotating, and the Kerbal is feeling some traction to the base of the ring. He's staying there, isn't he? He's staying in one place. He's getting pulled down towards it. So, what was I going to say? How fast are we rotating? It is pretty slow. It looks to me like... Okay, I'm going to take my position from the top. So, when Kerbin is directly... I'm not showing the footage to actually calculate it properly. I'll put it... Maybe I'll put it on screen and actually work out how much G-force that Kerbal, that little minuscule speck in the grand scheme of things, how much G-force is he actually experiencing? So, don't worry, I kind of let slip earlier. I said driving, I remember. But yes, this is a rover. Another anticlimactic thing, unfortunately. I thought to myself, well, Kerbals can't stand up based on weight felt on a surface, weight being in inverted commas, but surely we could just do it with a rover. Rovers don't need to stand up, rovers just drive based on friction against the ground. There is something going on with part collision, and you just saw it there. The tyre died, and the back right tyre died as well. Just a little bit of RCS pushing it against the ground, nowhere near enough to generate 1G, and yet the Rover wheels pop. Maybe these structural panels haven't been finely sanded. Maybe they're a bit jagged in places, maybe there's a bit of sharp metal sticking out that popped the wheels. Personally, I think there's just a problem with collision. I can't say for sure, but regardless, despite the fact that now we actually have an unusable rover, I'm still going to try and rotate the thing, and see if we can maybe drag it around based on the final the final wheels. But the thing just floats away because it is not currently experiencing any gravity, and it's got nothing to pull it forwards. There's no friction being felt because it can just float off. So I'm going to have to use some RCS. I'm going to have to put it back on the base of the ring, and in short, the rover doesn't work. I couldn't get it to drive around, and I tried loads of other ones as well. I even tried landing gear, and no, wait, I didn't try. I should try landing gear. Why haven't I tried landing gear? I guess they're not powered, but I need to try landing gear. That is something I'm going to do, because landing gear aren't going to pop, are they? Maybe in a future video. But yeah, all the other rover wheels, they pop as well, which is really a shame. But I've set the thing running, and as you can see, there goes our Kerbal. Just fly above him. He's having a whale of a time, just lying down on the panel. I'm trying to push the rover down onto the base of this giant ring we have, and nothing much is going to happen, unfortunately. So yeah, that's really the end of that, and it's time to wrap up, I suppose. I feel almost as if I haven't really talked about that much. I don't know where I'm getting that from. I definitely have gone through everything I planned to talk about. And I guess this video isn't much more than, hey guys, I built a ring. It's just a topic that really excites me, and I'm hoping that there are those of you in the audience who are similarly excited by the prospect. What if people actually build this in real life? Build a massive habitat that you know, we could have. But that is the end of the video, and I won't say anything more. I'll stop blabbering now. So thank you very much for watching this video. This has been all that we're going to be doing on artificial gravity. I think I may do a gear bay thing in the future, but maybe we'll see. If you would like to become a YouTube partner, there is a link, a referral link in the description. If you like the video, please do like the video, and I shall see you all next time. We're going to have to think of some interesting topics to do in the future.